A hallmark of pop conservatism is an increasing attempt to introduce a militant religiosity into public discourse and government policy, as well as a rabid intolerance for large groups of people who do not share the highly particular religious sentiments of the pop conservatives, including atheists, gays and lesbians, immigrants, civil and political libertarians, most intellectuals, academicians, scientists, and secular philosophers, the always conveniently unspecified liberals, and even those softly religious Americans who prefer to maintain modest, private, and somewhat flexible forms of worship. Much of this intolerance is bolstered and justified by two principal arguments. One, that religious belief is required for individual morality and liberty to exist, and two, that American society was founded on Christian principles. Both arguments are encapsulated in George H.W. Bush's 1987 statement. I don't know that atheists should be considered as citizens, nor should they be considered patriots. This is one nation under God. The refutation of the first claim is easy. It requires the virtually ubiquitous observation of even one atheist acting morally on a consistent basis. A more in-depth set of arguments against the claim that religion is needed for morality can be found in my essay, Morality Does Not Require Religion, which is linked to in the references section accompanying this presentation. To refute the second claim, it is necessary only to observe that the U.S. Constitution does not contain a single reference to God, with the exception of the Year of Our Lord, which was the 18th century equivalent of today's commonly used abbreviation AD, Anno Domini, a device most people use casually, without thinking of God or religion at all. Moreover, the Declaration of Independence refers not to any set of Christian religious beliefs, but rather to a creator and nature's God, which would be perfectly consistent with any religious system, including a deistic one. Finally, the American founders were a highly religiously diverse body of people, who were united only in their aversion to the government imposing religious practices upon individuals. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration and a deist, wrote, "It does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg." He also noted that millions of innocent men, women, and children since the introduction of Christianity have been burned, tortured, fined, and imprisoned, yet we have not advanced 1 inch toward uniformity. Indeed, Jefferson cautioned that history furnishes no example of a priest-ridden people maintaining a free civil government. This marks the lowest grade of ignorance of which their civil as well as religious leaders will always avail themselves for their own purposes. James Madison was also strongly opposed to the union of church and state, and to government religious imposition. He noted, "During almost 15 centuries has the legal establishment of Christianity been on trial. What have been its fruits? More or less in all places, pride and indolence in the clergy, ignorance and servility in the laity, in both superstition, bigotry, and persecution." He also remarked that religious bondage shackles and debilitates the mind, and unfits it for every noble enterprise. John Adams, too, was privately extremely skeptical of religion in general, and wrote to Jefferson, "I almost shudder at the thought of alluding to the most fatal example of the abuses of grief which the history of mankind has preserved, the cross. Consider what calamities that engine of grief has produced." The pop conservatives' claims that religion is required for morality are not only intellectually feeble, they are also convenient enablers for intolerant treatment of individuals who do not share the pop conservatives' religious beliefs. After all, if these people disagree on religious matters with the pop conservatives, they cannot be moral, and so they are not quite on the same level of humanity as those who think rightly. This attitude is characteristic of such organizations as the now-dead Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority, Pat Robertson's Christian Coalition, and James Dobson's Focus on the Family. One of Falwell's remarks, the attribution of blame for the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks to groups of whose lifestyles and beliefs Falwell disapproved, is typical of pop conservative religious intolerance. Falwell said, "I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, the People for the American Way, all of them, who have tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen." Likewise, the aggressive religious intolerance of pop conservatives translates into foreign policy, as evidenced by Ann Coulter's recommendation with regard to the Middle East that we should invade their countries, kill their leaders, and convert them to Christianity. The pop conservatives' attitude toward religion mimics the attitudes held by the Crusaders and the Spanish Inquisition. It is certainly not a consistent view of Christianity as the religion of peace and love that more level-headed Christians claim it to be.